this is predictions generally for the entire world. Every real estate market is different. Sydney would be different to commercial real estate, industrial, and so on. But in a general, I'm looking at the transit of Ketu into Cancer, which will be in October, November of this year. And that's going to crush this market. Right now, Jupiter just transited into Cancer. And I was expecting this to actually we're supposing that over the next few months, we're going to enter into some sort of mania, like with the...
India will see a growth in real estate. I sort of have been speaking to a few people in India who've generally mentioned that currently real estate sales is sort of, so what's the situation there and why?
Foreign banks came in, Indian banks started to lend on a fractional reserve basis. So the Indian debt levels are, I can just predict the timing of wars. And I think September 2027 into about June of 2028, I'm expecting...
Tell us about 3 to 4 countries that you see it impacting heavily in the next 18 months.
Even without the astrology, you look at the most inflated real estate markets in the world. It's England.
Today I have with me Dr. Jain, Dr. Sulabh Jain. A lot of people have been asking me to get him on my podcast, so here he is. Welcome, Doctor. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Shruti. How are you?
I'm good. It's so exciting to have you on my channel. I had a number of people come back to me and say, can you bring Dr. Jain to discuss real estate? And I thought to myself, yeah, that's in the pipeline for me. So it was perfect timing. We've been scheduling because my son's been ill and so on and so forth. So the scheduling's sort of got messed up for a month, but hey, we're here today and I'm so glad.
Yep. Well, thank you for having me on your channel. I'm excited.
Dr. Jain, we're looking at real estate for the next sort of 3 to 5 years from an astrological point of view. But before we commence that, I want to give an audience an understanding of what type of astrology you focus on.
Yep, absolutely. Firstly, please call me Sulabh. We don't need to be formal. So my background's actually in Indian palmistry. I was taught palmistry when I was a kid by my grandfather. And so alongside palmistry came a love of astrology. I've been using mundane astrology in the Vedic system to make predictions on the markets. So all the way back in 2020, when we were all in lockdown, I was actually predicting that real estate is going to go through a huge boom. I also predicted crypto and gold and silver and AI and a bunch of other stuff as well. And most of those predictions have aged pretty well. So I have my own YouTube channel at Chariot Palmistry, like youtube.com/Chariot Palmistry, where you can see all these old videos. But the real estate one, I think, is going to be really interesting over the next few years.
Indeed. And what I've noticed is a lot of real estate, the real estate market across the world has sort of started faltering, like it's going sort of static and then stagnant and then falling. So that's one of the reasons I sort of wanted to have this discussion. What sort of planetary impacts will we have for the next 3 to 5 years, and how is that going to impact our real estate market?
Yeah. So this is predictions generally for the entire world. Every real estate market is different. Sydney would be different to Los Angeles, for example, which is different to New Delhi. And even within those markets, you'll have commercial real estate, industrial, and so on. But in a general sense, I'm looking at the transit of Ketu into Cancer, which will be in October, November of this year. And that's going to crush this market. It's actually part of an 18-year cycle that Ketu does every 18 years. So if you go back in time 18 years from now, it was the year 2008 when the GFC happened. If you go back 18 years further from there, it was 1990 when that global recession took place. So this is like something reliable. I think it's only just a few months away. Having said that, right now, Jupiter just transited into Cancer. And I was expecting this to actually inflate the real estate market. We're supposing that over the next few months, we're going to enter into some sort of mania, like with the bubble. And then it's all going to pop at the very end of the year.
So, I mean, when we talk about the impacts across the world, and we talk about Ketu's transit, which is 18 years, does that mean we're going to have, I know it's a silly question and it's probably going to be no, an 18-year drop? I don't see an 18-year drop, but I certainly see a 3 to 5 year drop.
I see an 18-month drop. So from October of 2026 into 18 months after that, maybe early mid 2028, I'll rephrase, it'll go down and slowly work its way up, but then by the other side of 2028, it'll boom again.
And what percentage drop are we looking at? I mean, 2008, we had a massive drop and decline. And that was probably because of the financial sectors and what was happening, the mortgage lending. There was a basic crisis there. I don't remember about 1990. I was a little child then. But what sort of amount are we looking at in terms of percentage-wise?
I don't want to put an exact number on it because Jyotish looks at bigger trends rather than what technical analysis can give you, which is a number. But in the next 6 months, the crisis I think we're about to have will be a culmination of all the crises that we've had since the beginning of this century. So back in 2000, we had the dot-com bubble. I think the AI bubble is going to crash within about this next 6-month period. Then we had the global financial crisis, which led to a real estate crisis. I think that's coming in the next 6 months. We had sovereign debt defaults in 2011 and 12. We're going to have a similar thing happening with the bond market now. Oh, and the COVID crash, that was because of a virus. I'm expecting a new virus in the next couple months, and that's going to happen too. So it's literally every crisis of the last 25 years is coming in the next 6 months.
So we can see a substantial impact, I'd say, to the property market.
I think so. And all markets.
Definitely, particularly financial market. Now, you said something very interesting in the starting, Sulabh. You said that every country, I suppose, has a different it works differently in every country. So tell us about, I suppose, 3 to 4 countries that you see it impacting heavily in the next 18 months.
Well, even without the astrology, you look at the most inflated real estate markets in the world. It's England, Australia, probably Hong Kong. There's a couple others. I mean, no country in the world's affordable for the next generation right now. But of all of these countries, I'd say those would be the worst affected. Mostly just because they're so high up, they've got further to fall.
Mm. I'm supposing you said that we will probably see gains from a second half of 2028. Now, are we going to see, I suppose, a rally then, because we're now past this massive decline that we expect for the next 18 months?
At that point, yes, there should be a huge rally.
What about the current system in Australia? I mean, we currently have had a number of changes in the tax and the CGT component negative gearing. What I sense that people are feeling not happy with what's happened. How do you feel that's going to impact the Australian market? And I like to focus on Australia quite a bit because, a lot of people living in Australia are currently debating what's happening.
Look, the government, both sides of politics, have failed the Australian people for well over 25 years. And you could go back even half a century. So most of the policies that we have in place at the moment are geared for investors. So when they try and scale back those policies, it's the investors who get upset. There's really no government policy you can bring in place that will actually help the next generation buy new property. You've just got to let developers go bankrupt. You've got to let banks suffer big losses in order to have a restart or a rebirth.
Interesting. And quite a few are in the news at the moment. Big developers where they currently have a lot of debt in their books. So it's very, very interesting times when it comes to Australian property and where it's going to head. Now, if I asked you, we've talked about 3 countries that have inflated prices, but what about those that you feel bullish on? There's going to be others that rise out of the ranks here in this, whilst this scenario is playing out. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's four countries I really like the look of, but to explain why I think these are going to do well over like the medium to long term, let's maybe step back and have a look at where we are in the world right now. According to Indian philosophy, time runs in cycles. Most of us born in the world today, most of us adults in the world today, were born at the end of the industrial age. And we talk about yugas in Indian philosophy. That was one age of humanity. But most of our kids are born in the information age. And so we're living through a period now where the industrial age is collapsing, the information age is taking over. So if you want to look at which is the most successful countries in the next yuga, you have to look at the countries that have the best information age infrastructure. I think that's the United States, it'll be Germany, India, and Australia. These are the four booming countries.
Well, it's very interesting. I would have thought that perhaps we're looking at a decline in Australia in the next 18 months, which is sort of the direction we're taking. So how does that, there is a contradiction there. So how does that work?
So in the short term, there's a big crash in Australia, bigger than most parts of the world. But in the medium to long term, it's a bigger rise than most parts of the world.
So they both sort of sit there within that 18-month span. Okay, now I'm going to ask you a different type of question. You've sort of reiterated in the starting that, or even during our conversation, that India will see a growth in real estate. Let's go through that because I sort of have been speaking to a few people in India who've generally mentioned that currently real estate sales are sort of not exactly where they should be. So what's the situation there and why?
The big demographic change in India over the last quarter century is that Indians are starting to take on debt. A couple generations ago, Indians were allergic to debt. They'd save up and then buy their own property or their own car or what have you. It's just lately, since globalization happened, foreign banks came in, Indian banks started to lend on a fractional reserve basis. So the Indian debt levels are really high, but if you look at India's demographics, it's also a country that's growing. And it's a highly educated country compared to other parts of the world. So you put high education with rising income, combine that together, it just means real estate prices have to go up. Yes, they're getting soft now, but medium to long term, it can only go up. That's the only direction for India.
Okay. Now, in all of this, you haven't mentioned the Middle East. And in all of this, the most important catalyst that currently is driving a lot of fluctuations within a lot of spaces, gold, silver, we've got oil, we've got properties in Middle East itself. What is your take on this? I mean, this war doesn't look like it's ending. And what does that mean for the Middle East?
Yeah. So firstly, we actually predicted the war in the Middle East, plus the Venezuela war and a couple others at the very start of this year. And if we were to come back to what I was saying before about the industrial age collapsing, most Middle Eastern countries rely on oil as their primary source of income. And oil is an industrial age element, not an element, commodity, if you will. In the future, it's probably going to be renewable energy that will take over. So any economy dependent on oil will have to collapse. And so just as like an outright, I'm thinking there's going to be a big financial collapse for the Middle East. There'll be certain pockets that will be able to pivot into the information age, but not all of them are going to do well at it. So that would be an area I'd be very, very cautious on.
So basically, if you're buying property within Middle East, be careful because the long-term trend isn't looking too good.
Exactly.
Right. And what about the next 18 months? I mean, is this war going to take a backstage or is it just going to continue and get prolonged, I guess, prolonged?
I think it's going to get prolonged. I'm also predicting a bigger global conflict happening in it'll start in late 2027, then get really out of hand in 2028. And most likely the Middle East will be the epicenter of that.
Tell us more about this. Is Israel the catalyst? Is Iran the catalyst? Is US the catalyst? Tell us more about that.
Well, Israel's pretty much the only country picking fights at the moment, aren't they? So I'm sure that they'll be a big part of this, and America seems to get dragged by the leash wherever Israel goes, but I'm also looking at China and Russia too. So whatever happens with the energy of America, it's always going to involve Russia and China. It wouldn't surprise me if two of these countries get into a conflict in the latter part of 2027. Most likely it'll be through a proxy war rather than directly against each other, but there'll be a new one then.
I've heard about this so much, Dr. Jain, where I hear that there's going to be a global conflict between US and China, and that perhaps Iran might actually use a nuclear weapon. So I'm seeing a very sort of, and from conversations I'm having, it could be a dark period for all of us, and humanity may struggle as a result. Is there any sort of inclination towards that way? I don't want to push this podcast towards that way because we're talking about real estate, but because I see it, all these things sort of impact real estate for the next 5 years anyway.
Absolutely. So firstly, I'm not so sure about the specific use of nuclear weapons. I can just predict the timing of wars. And I think September 2027 into about June of 2028, I'm expecting 5 or 6 new wars or new armed conflicts. So whatever happens there is obviously going to impact real estate. That approximately comes to the time where Ketu leaves Cancer, 18 months after October of 2026. So there's obviously going to be a connection there somehow. Having said that, there's no part of the world that'll be safe, but at the same time, humanity as a whole is going to be getting better. I'm predicting that there's going to be huge advances in medicine and health technology over about this next 2 to 3 year time frame. And also by the latter period of 2029, there's going to be a new super technology in the world. Something that's as big as artificial intelligence or even bigger than the internet when that came out.
That's very interesting. And you know, I'm not surprised if, and I hear about this too, that we will sort of go to outer space is what I'm hearing, and we're going to be able to fly in aircrafts and things like that all the way up to the moon and have a space war. And it's just fascinating stuff that I'm actually currently listening to. Now, coming back to real estate, you mentioned there are going to be 6 new conflicts. Whereabouts are these conflicts going to be situated in your research?
I'm not actually sure where they'll be located. All I know is the timing. So I've tried different systems to calculate it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I can't confidently say where it'll be.
Sure. And I suppose because I have an audience in India, let's look at India for the next 5 years. There's a lot of chatter that the borders are quite risky at the moment. We see chatter that Bangladesh, we've got Nepal, we've got Afghanistan, which supports India currently. There's so much, there's Pakistan, China as well. So let's look at India for the next sort of 18 to 24 months. How is India looking in terms of the country and the safety, as well as everything that's going on around the borders?
Yep. So strangely enough, I think India is actually one of the safest countries in the world. If you can get away from the internal politics and the fact that Pakistan's always going to pick fights with India somehow, China will probably want to pick a border fight at some point in the future too. Despite that, India's energy looks amazing. As I said before, India is going to be one of the most successful countries in the world for the next few decades and centuries. So as India's economy does better and better, India's security will do better too.
Could we be entering a period where gold, commodities, and real estate all rise together?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And do you see migration trends changing property prices and creating winners globally?
Yes, I mean, in fact, that trend's been going on really since the beginning of real estate market, right? Even you look at Dubai's boom, it didn't happen because the local Dubai people decided to start up companies and their economy flourished. It happened because they became a tax haven and everyone else flocked into that country. So yes, migration will always play a role in future. I think, coming back to your point on India, most likely people will start migrating into India. And since the beginning of this century, people have been leaving India. That trend's probably going to reverse in the next 5 years.
Well, we see a lot of situations currently occurring, not only in Europe, but we're seeing it in Australia ourselves. I mean, more recently. I'm not surprised that people would move back, given the sort of chatter that we see on Facebook, for example, in various groups and stuff. And it's really rough to see it. So yeah, I'm actually not surprised that you mentioned that.
Yep. But they won't be leaving to go back to India because other countries are a bad place. I think they'll be going back to India because India's economy will have more opportunities than other countries.
So it's opportunity-based migration rather than racism-based.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, good to hear. It's been worrying the last sort of month or two that I've been reading. I've actually stopped reading those forums and blogs and stuff because there's just too much racism involved everywhere. It's not Australia-based alone. It's everywhere that you look at it.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm going to ask you, I suppose, one final question here. Complete this sentence. By 2030, global real estate will be
an amazing place to invest.
Wow, good way to end this. Dr. Jain, I want to thank you for your time. It's been a great 20 minutes of a conversation on real estate. I look forward to further conversations in the future.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for listening.